Hi, it's Dr. Ranj, and I'm really grateful to be joined again by Nin. You may recall last time we had a discussion around autoimmune disease and how it's affected by our diet and nutrition. Um, so it's really grateful. I'm really grateful to have you back, Nin, to have another chat with us today.
No, I'm happy you having me back.
Okay. So what we were going to do today is look at some of the other aspects of autoimmune disease and how it's affected by things like our activity levels, our fitness levels, and also things like our sleep and some of the other potentially more riskier things that we might do, and see what the links are between those. So it'd be really good to get kind of your experience and things that you found with those.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Brilliant. Okay. So first question to start off for you is, obviously we discussed sort of diet and nutrition last time in some detail, and how you had to adapt your diet to when you learned your diagnosis. Were you aware of the impact of your diagnosis on some of the other elements of life?
It was very obvious how it affected me physically when I was first diagnosed, because of even though people, they call it an invisible illness because
Yeah.
you physically can't see it, but it was everything. So it was the spongy feet were affecting my gait. It was affecting my speed, the kind of the tingling and the numbness in my legs and the shooting pains was having a knock-on effect on everything. So actually, at that time, it did have a huge impact on my physical capabilities. And then it was just through, and then the neurologist put me through to someone to have neuro physiotherapy, to then actually undertake traditional physiotherapy as well, just to help me with my balance and help me with my walk. So that it was a very much an instant sort of effect on my body.
Sure. Okay. And then, as well as sort of the physical aspect, sort of some of the other aspects of life, in terms of sort of your family. Obviously we talked about family last time, how important they were for you in terms of getting on board with nutrition and that, but sort of some of those other factors as well.
What I found was actually it affected me emotionally, mentally and physically, just kind of having that. It brought my mood down completely. I really suffered from low mood. I suffered from a lot of guilt because I felt like it's something that I'd put upon myself. I felt like I'd created this. So I kind of dealt with a lot of sort of, guilt in that sense. I feel that my sleep, even now, is still being affected by it. And it's not always because of pain. I get sometimes restless legs, or sometimes my neurologist laughs because she's like, the part of my brain where I potentially have a lesion doesn't tell me that I'm tired.
Okay. Yeah.
So where it's placed, my body doesn't necessarily know it's tired, or my body knows it's tired, but my brain doesn't switch off. So that's the kind of another, I don't know, challenge that I'm faced with on a day-to-day basis. The fact that actually, if I don't sleep, it just ends up having a knock-on effect, because that really enhances and kind of increases my symptoms a lot of the time.
That's really interesting. Sleep was one of the things that I wanted to discuss. So we started talking about. So let's carry on with sleep. That's really interesting. So, did they find that that's where one of the lesions was in there, or was that what?
Yeah, so when we were analysing, I've got 8 or 9 on my brain, and I've got one on my spine. So the one on my spine is what affects a lot of my walking. It's all the connectors, isn't it, in our brain and all our nerves. And so the way they found was one of my lesions, where it was placed, doesn't allow my body to understand that, the melatonin, the natural release of melatonin, my body doesn't necessarily get that.
Sure.
So it's almost got a plug, like it's blocked.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Which is really strange. Then I do rely on other factors and other outside influences just to help me increase my melatonin in order to get to that sort of relaxed element so that I can sleep.
Yeah. Okay. And what have you found?
My actual pain medication can work as a sedative. So my nurse did advise just increasing that slowly. But then obviously my discussion with her was actually, it does have a knock-on effect. I sometimes wake up with like paralysis in my mouth and I can't talk because it has that much of an effect. So it's fine. So it's fine lines, isn't it? And it's seeking advice from the professionals around you just to make sure that you're doing everything within a safe barrier and a safe environment. But she was very open in saying just increase it by 25 milligrams. It might just create that sedative sort of feeling, but not too much where you really like you're waking up drunk in the morning and suffering with some of the side effects from that. And that has helped. I've had to be flexible with when I take it and how soon I take it, because sometimes then by like 7:30, I'm like, oh, I need to go to sleep, which is not really useful when you've got a young family that you have to tend to. So it's finding a balance as to when's the right time to take that. I've also lent on just like it was like a warm milk almost, and nighttime teas. So nighttime teas have been really helpful. Just the like the chamomile and all the natural sort of infused of relaxation, lavender, all those things. And just really working on a structured and well-balanced sleep routine. So making sure my room's dark. I've started wearing an eye mask so that I'm not having any bit of light distracting me, making sure it's cool and kind of calm environment. And sometimes I'll try and read, other times I'll just crash out. It just varies. It's kind of flexible as to what my body needs at that time.
Okay, that's really good. Yeah, I mean, sounds like you're doing all the right things in terms of it's about, again, that preparation for bed in terms of training your mind and your body that now it's time for sleep. So so like you said, in terms of those relaxing things like having that warm drink, the herbal teas, like you mentioned, chamomile, magnesium supplements, either as a supplement or sometimes in tea, can be helpful. And there are a few other sort of roots and things that are helpful for sleep as well, like valerian. I don't know whether you tried that as a tea. I think some people don't like the taste of it very much.
No, I think the one that I was advised to have, it was part of like an oaty sort of milk, and it was just it wasn't the most pleasant, but it was almost like block your nose and drink it sort of thing, because it's like means to an end. But I was trying magnesium at one point, but I felt like it wasn't doing anything. And then I realized it was the wrong type of magnesium. I didn't realize there was loads of different types of magnesium and kind of the purpose of it. And obviously if your body doesn't need it, that type that I was taking, it's not going to make a difference. So I'm still on the hunt for the right type of magnesium. So, but I have heard that as well. So that is something that I was willing to try.
Okay. And it's about sort of, again, it's getting the sort of the body clock right, in terms of when your cortisol levels spike and obviously melatonin as well, and trying to encourage that cycle to be correct. So it comes to sort of early mornings as well. So when you wake up in the morning, is trying to get that bright light in the morning. So actually trying to get outside if you can, and getting at least 10 minutes of bright light, which sets your body clock up for the rest of the day. And what we don't want is cortisol to be high at night time. So cutting out sort of especially bright lights, phones and devices and watching TV, because they will suppress the melatonin levels more as well.
So is there anything else, like in terms of relaxation techniques or anything that could really enhance or promote better sleep? Because I know there's quite a lot of individuals that it's not necessarily because of pain they can't sleep, and sometimes it is pain, but it's just that they can't get to that point of relaxation. where they feel like they're just completely relaxed, not worried about anything. You know, when we say we've got an overactive brain and we tend to overthink on a night, don't we? Is there anything that you would suggest or could recommend?
I mean, it's different for everybody. Everybody, can we can try different things. I mean, some people respond to doing things like yoga, meditation, kind of breath work and breathing techniques help some people. There's so many different types to kind of look into. A couple that I know of are box breathing. Have you heard of that?
Is that where you do the kind of the
Yeah, the
breathe
breathe
in,
in, hold.
hold, breathe out, and then
Yeah, so there's that. There's the 4 to 8 where you breathe in for 4 seconds and then you breathe out for 8 seconds. And it's the breathing out is longer because what we want to do is stimulate the parasympathetic side of the nervous system, because that's the relaxing, calming side of the nervous system. So that's what we're trying to engage by doing all of these relaxing activities. We want to switch on the parasympathetic nervous system and kind of calm down the sympathetic side, which is the stress, flight and response, flight response side of the nervous system, which we want to try and cut down. So those are things that can help. Other things that can help, obviously caffeine, cutting down caffeine, or definitely not drinking it too late on in the afternoon, because caffeine has quite a long sort of half-life, so it lasts in the body for about 12 hours. So anything after midday, we want to try and cut that down. Because again, caffeine's interesting because what it does, very similar to what you mentioned in terms of your lesion, it actually blocks the part of your brain that senses it's getting tired.
Right.
So so although your body is physically getting tired, you don't feel sleepy, because that's the effect that caffeine has. So trying to, especially not having it, I tend to tell people definitely, ideally don't have it after midday.
Right. Okay. So that's something I definitely need to work on then. And it's getting to that point, isn't it? Because I'll be at work and I'll get to like 1:30, 2, and I'll be getting quite tired, and then I'll be like, gosh, I've got the whole evening and the whole night to get through it, and managing the girls. I'm like, right, okay, I just need a coffee just to get me through the next few hours. But what I have started doing is having decaf. Okay. On a night. That's obviously to stop me from eating after a certain hour as well. But also just leaning on a bit of a decaf sort of drink, just to alleviate the caffeine a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely fine. Have you tried things like smoothies as an alternative? Just that sort of energy boost, obviously not.
Yeah, no, not at that time in the day. I have in the morning. But again, it's trial and error, isn't it? And shifting. And I know after our last conversation, it's just trying new things and not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but you get so used to the routine or the way you do things. It just takes a conversation like this to be like, actually, you know what? Let me try this instead. This might help, because we all get stuck in our ways a little bit, I find.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in terms of sleeping then, because I know this is something that I've been trying, what would be a very healthy bedtime routine? Like we have bedtime routines for children, don't we?
Yeah, of course.
So we're raising our children and everyone's like, right, okay, it should be bottle, bath, bed, one of those and a story in there. But as an adult, I feel like we lose that bedtime routine and we're busy doing jobs downstairs. It's like, right, I'm going to bed now. And we don't necessarily have that wind down time. So what would you typically say would be a really healthy bedtime routine for an adult with an autoimmune disease?
It's really good. It's not too far off from that, bottle, bath, bed.
What type of bottle are we having?
Well, definitely not a bottle of alcohol. But yeah, so yeah, you're right in terms of having a routine is really helpful, and it's that whole winding down process that is, telling your body that now's the time to kind of switch off and get to bed. So ideally, adults, we should be getting between 7 to 9 hours of good quality restorative sleep. And what we mean by restorative is that is it's during the sleep phase that your body does all of its, and your body and your brain does all of its repair, repairing itself.
Yeah.
And so that's really key. So we want 7 to 9 hours of really good quality sleep, where the bodies and the brains had time to get rid of all the toxins, get rid of all the sort of the damaged cells, the ones that aren't working properly, replenish them with new cells, so that we can be as optimized as possible. And when we're not getting that sleep, that's when you start to see the effects of this process, that the toxins are still there, the cells aren't functioning as well as they should be. So it's trying to get to that level where we can have that good solid 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So how do we do that in terms of a routine? It's just goes back to things like trying to switch off your any devices and things at least an hour before you go to bed. So if you can switch them off completely, that's great. I know some people like to use kind of the blue light filter, but again, if you can switch off as much as possible. Lighting in your house as well, ideally you want kind of a sort of low lighting, more sort of not the kind of the bright white lights. You want sort of low level kind of red in the red spectrum, so really low level lighting, because that can be helpful. The bedroom should be kept as like a sort of a sanctuary for sleep, if you like. So it should be, because I know a lot of us now, bedrooms are for like doing homework or office work and watching TV in bed. So those are all things that kind of distract the body and mind, kind of confuse the body and mind. What we do now, we're watching TV or we're going to sleep, that kind of thing. So it should be kept as a place for just sleeping. So that kind of routine where you're switching off your gadgets, not doing anything that's going to cause stress. So not paying bills or anything like that before you go to bed, or last minute homework that you've forgotten about. Keeping your bedroom cool, like you mentioned. Even things like having a sleep mask or blackout curtains, where you can make sure that there's it is really dark. There's calming drinks, trying different sort of herbal drinks that are for sleep, like we said, chamomile, and things like that. So those are all hopefully helpful. You can try some calming activities as well, like you said, reading, journaling sometimes. So if we've got a lot on our minds, sometimes journaling, where you can just put everything down on a piece of paper, and it's off your mind, and you can leave it till the next day. So that can help as well.
Yeah, no, that's interesting actually, because I know a conversation that I had with my neurologist, and my husband was with me at the time. She was like, sleep's really important, and actually someone with an autoimmune disease might find it harder, because you'll go to bed tired, you would have had your solid sleep, but you'll still wake up tired.
Yeah.
And it's something that I questioned with her, because I was like, I don't understand why, because I'm getting my 8 to 9 hours sleep, I'm following the routines that she advised. And she just said it's because actually it takes longer for somebody with an autoimmune disease for their brain to recharge and their body to recharge. So she goes, you and your husband will go to bed at the same time. You'll have the same solid sleep. He will wake up 100% charged. You'll probably wake up about 50, 60%. Yeah. So she goes, so you're already on the back burner of being tired. Yeah. So that's why she said it's really important then to have that relaxing sort of routine leading up to it, so that your body is as best placed as it can be to have the best sleep, because you're already fighting against it. Yeah. And I think, and that's the hardest thing.
And I think part of it is because when you've having an autoimmune condition, your immune system is already working hard in the background. So again, that requires energy in itself. So that's I think that's where the extra element of you're going to wake up that much tired, because even though you're asleep, your body's still working harder than most.
Yeah, Yeah, and I think that's, and in terms of like my day, I can have a very, as physical as my days can be, I can have a very physical day or a very relaxing day. It doesn't necessarily affect how my body feels going to sleep and how it feels waking up. So it's almost like having pockets. So my physical activity is one pocket, and that deals with one part of my autoimmune disease. My sleep is almost another pocket that deals with something else. And it's just and sometimes there's no link between them, and sometimes they link really nicely.
Yeah.
Sometimes my body just does what it wants to do, regardless how much I try on what I do. And actually physical activity, which is something we were going to discuss as well today, doesn't always make me extra tired for the day, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, I can do absolutely nothing one day and be exhausted, and other days I will participate in some sort of physical activity and actually sometimes feel better.
Yeah.
That's been a positive, actually. But that was going to be my question for you in terms of safely. So in terms of physical activity, is there anything in particular you would recommend in terms of to support somebody with an autoimmune disease?
Yeah. I mean, we know that physical activity is important to trying to help reduce autoimmune condition. Well, it works in two ways really, and this is where it can be variable for people with different types of symptoms and how kind of far progressed their condition is. So in one way, it's really important for rehabilitation, as you know from what you said earlier. So it's and we need both types of exercise, so aerobic exercise and sort of strength building as well, and resistance training, and so that's kind of one element of why it's important to help rehabilitate us when say for example you have had a flare and you've got new symptoms. Secondly is because what we want to try and do is which kind of all of this links to is reducing inflammation, and we know that actually exercise helps to reduce inflammation. It's been found that exercise, it triggers a chemical in the brain called BDNF. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and this is a really, really key chemical in supporting nerve growth, supporting the sort of the plasticity of the brain and the nerves. So it's a really, really key link between sort of exercise and supporting reducing inflammation in the brain and helping to support the growth of nerve cells. So that's another reason why sort of exercise is important. In terms of how to go about it, I think the important thing is like because everybody's has different symptoms and different sort of might have different parts of the body that have been affected. It's really important to adapt to kind of a personal sort of training or physical sort of training regime. So ideally, if you can work with a physio, like you mentioned earlier, just because they'll be able to best guide you in terms of how to or what the best types of exercises are, but also how to gradually increase your exercise levels, because we don't want to do anything that's going to cause any harm or damage, and we want to gradually increase things as your strength and your your mobility and your balance and things all start to improve. Then that's probably the best way. So it's kind of adapting, taking it slow and steady, working with somebody who's got the kind of experience to tell you how to do that incrementally.
No, that's interesting actually, because there's two parts of physical activity that I have to undertake. So I do the neuro side, which some days is just throwing and catching.
Okay.
It's just throwing and catching a ball between myself and my husband to work on my coordination, because sometimes that's not great. Cognitively, sometimes I'm not great. So just the things of the brain signals to tell me to do something, sometimes are just not there. So I will drop something, or I'll lose strength in my hand, or just those little things. So actually the neuro side of my physiotherapy is equally as important as my physical side.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because physically I do a lot of strength training. I can't run, I don't go jogging or anything, but I will take Cooper for a walk, whether that's with or without my stick. I will force myself to go out and get a bit of fresh air, and just kind of get the blood flowing and get a bit of cardio in for I think that's for a healthy heart as well. I think that's important. But a lot of it is just strength training, and that, without realizing, does get my heart rate pumping as well, because just sometimes even just your own body weight can be enough. I found that you don't need to have weights or anything fancy in your house. Just using your own body weight as kind of resistance training, I felt quite useful. And that's because when I was first diagnosed, I couldn't even get off the floor without support. Sometimes, we all have our days, depending on the flare or the sort of day I've had, I still need that support. But my main focus was being able to sit on the floor, play with my girls, be as physically active as I possibly could be, so that it didn't impact their lives as much. So I do a lot of work on my joints. So a lot of bending, a lot of work on my arms. So I've got my hand strength. I've got this little device that I use for my hand, just to strengthen my fingers and the muscles and all those tiny muscles and all those little things that you forget. So yeah, for me, definitely it's having that balance between the neuro side and the physical side. I found that the most beneficial in terms of my needs and my family's needs. And it is very bespoke, isn't it? It's very unique to the individual and their current kind of progression and their current physical requirements. It all depends on that, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting as well, because like you say, it's about what you want. And I don't know whether you felt like this, but obviously when something like this happened, where your physical ability to do stuff is reduced, that immediately people want to be back to normal, if you like. But like you say, it's really important, and it must be really challenging to kind of adapt to that. But like you say, it's important to actually find out what is important to you, and working towards that. So like you say, being able to spend time with your family, being able to do things with your children and things like that, because obviously getting back to what we define as normal might not be achievable, but actually finding what is important to us, one, is going to make us kind of feel more motivated to do it, because that's what's important to you, and those are the things that you want to be able to do.
Yeah, I think it is it's your parameters, isn't it? So actually I've had to make sacrifices with my career because I couldn't continue the career I was in. So I've had to have a role change and a job change. And so that's a huge bugbear. That was a huge knock-on effect for me, that. And it was disheartening, because actually you work so hard and you train so hard and you have a passion for the job that you're in. Then all of a sudden I felt cheated, because I felt like it was almost taken away from me. And the normal that you mentioned, you have to create your own, and then I became resentful, and I became somebody who I'd never even recognized before, and I became very not necessarily jealous, but I did resent people who could do things. I became very frustrated, because once upon a time I could do this, that, and the other, and then I couldn't, and it was just almost like acceptance, and just coming, and I joke and I share very openly that it's kind of like the stages of grief.
Yeah.
And you do go through the motions, and one element is acceptance. And once you get to that stage of acceptance, that's when I really feel your life starts to change, because you're not feeling sorry for yourself, which is a huge thing, because you do. You feel like you're getting a bit more independence, because people around you have realized what you can and can't do, and stop pandering to you, because that's another thing. People see that you can't do something and will naturally, because they don't want you to suffer, will interject. And actually what I need to do is I need to try it myself, and if I can't do it, I'll wait and I'll go try again and do it later. But that's acceptance from everyone. That's a whole community. That's my whole, you know, social circle of acceptance. But definitely finding the importance. I think I see life differently now. I've got a lot more gratitude. I've got a lot more patience as well. And I think those are the key things that have been positives, you know, and I can't believe I couldn't say this, but actually there's been so many positives since having an autoimmune disease, because it's allowed me to grow into a different person, because I've had to, and it's been forced upon me. And you just see things differently, and you approach things differently, because you know it's very much problem solving every day. Because if I want to do something, I know, like, I wasn't able to do that yesterday, how can I approach it differently today? It's very much that sort of everyday sort of scenario, and then just making the most of the situations and the moments that you can enjoy. I think definitely that's been the important part for me.
Yeah, it's definitely amazing to hear the journey that you've been on, and you know, the things that you've, like you say, you know, you've had to adapt to, and you know, going through this process, you know, and you know, it takes a lot of, you know, strength of character to do that.
Yeah, and in terms of like the physical activity side, sometimes just carrying out day-to-day jobs is absolutely exhausting. And I think sometimes you can just carry out something really simply, and that could feel like you've done an absolute workout. You know, what I could relate to back in the day, being in the gym, that sort of feeling of your muscles aching, you know, I can get that just from having a shower. And yes, and I've got adaptive utensils and kind of items around the house to support me day to day, and they do support me. So I'd like to think, if I didn't use those, how would I manage sometimes? But it's the little things that you do every day that just increases your physical activity. And I just think every time I do something, my body's just getting a bit stronger. So I just got to just keep moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that, yeah, that's part of it as well, isn't it? Kind of positive mindset. And you're right, you know, it's building things incrementally, and taking it slow, listening to your body, you know, allow your body to tell you, give you those messages that it needs to give you, like, you know, now I've done too much, or now's some time for some rest. And so yeah, so those I think are really important. And I was going to ask you that, you know, sort of in terms of day-to-day variability, and you know, we've touched on quite a lot of it already. How do you manage the days where, you know, you feel absolutely fine and you can do loads, and then the days where you can't?
Yeah, it's hard, because when I'm having a good day, I don't know how long that good day is going to last. So I cram everything in within a good day, which then makes me suffer sometimes the next day because I've done too much. So I'm very much still trying to find that balance myself. But in terms of a good day, and I'll have moments where I'll feel like my old self, because I've managed to fulfill whatever role I wanted to do or whatever jobs I wanted to do that day. But then it's also planning ahead. So I know if I've had, last weekend, it was my daughter's birthday. So I knew we'd have a very busy weekend, but I planned it so that we didn't do everything in one day. We did a couple of hours one day, then I had a rest period, and and then we ended up with like 3-day celebration, just because I couldn't do everything in one day. She absolutely loved it, but it was more of actually so that I could enjoy those moments. I needed those breaks in between, and I find myself planning ahead. So if I know something's coming up, I'll have a rest day beforehand. Or if I know I've got some busy days coming up at work, I'll make sure I've got some quiet downtime coming up. So it's very much, as much as I like to live in the moment, I spend a lot of my time thinking ahead, because I have to plan in order then to enjoy the moments that I am faced with on a day-to-day basis. And then when it's a down day, or I'm having a really challenging day physically and emotionally, I have to just sometimes just let myself be and shut myself off and have those recuperating sort of moments where I might do some deep breathing, or I might just channel into something that I would class as a hobby, and just kind of do something for myself, just a bit of self-care and mindfulness. I think I have to just channel into those.
Brilliant. Absolutely. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Yeah, pacing can be difficult, you know, so like you say, and we probably all do this, is, you know, when you feel on top of the world, you think you can do everything, and it's being mindful that you know the potential knock-on effect it's going to have. So yeah, and like you say, finding that balance can be quite difficult.
Yeah, it is, and I know it's something that every human being struggles with sometimes, is balance. I find it's something that, autoimmune disease or not, I feel like it's something that we all could benefit from. You know, we always work on the, you know, home life balance in terms of work life,
Yeah,
and making sure that balance is kind of there. But I think also the balance between a bit of me time and a bit of family time, that balance needs to be there as well. And I think sometimes we become very neglectful of our own needs, especially when we become parents, because we're so mindful of meeting our children's needs, that I feel like sometimes we just need to take a step back and think, actually, what do I need right now in order to recharge my own batteries? And that's something I'm definitely working on. It's taking a long time, and you know, you suffer with like parental guilt and this, that, and the other, and it's a mindset change, and it's something, I'm a work in progress on that.
you're doing really well. Yes. That's really cool. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's been a really helpful and insightful discussion on sort of the physical activity aspect of managing autoimmune disease, and also how important sleep is as well. Was there any kind of final comments that you wanted to leave with us?
No, I think it's just, I think for anyone who does have an autoimmune disease, I think it's really easy just to give up. I think because you're so low, especially when you've first been diagnosed, I think you're so low in terms of trying to process the news, you can very much give up. And I think it's really important to lean on people around you and just to give yourself time. I think that's what it is. You know, I'm a year and a bit after my diagnosis, and I feel like only now am I really truly figuring out that balance. You know, and I've very openly said I'm still a work in progress in some of the areas, but actually feeling like I can have that balance between myself and what my body needs and what my family needs. And yeah, I feel like that's something that definitely has taken a lot of time. So my parting words with anyone would be, just give yourself time, because it's a lot to process, and it's a lot to physically deal with, depending on what the flare up or what the relapse presents with in terms of any physical kind of disabilities. I think it's definitely something that needs a lot of time to process, and just be patient with yourself. And just because you can't do it today doesn't mean you can't tomorrow. And it is very much that sort of, that's what I'd like to share with anyone. Don't give up.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, no, excellent advice. And yeah, absolutely. So it's not giving up, it's, you know, giving yourself time, giving your body time, giving your mind time, and you know, things will improve. So it's being positive.
Yeah, no, it has. Yeah, lovely.
Thank you for joining me again today.
No, you're welcome. It's been really lovely. It's been really insightful, and I'm definitely going to look into the magnesium and work on my sleep pattern and my sleep routine a little bit more, because I think it's just helpful for anybody, to be honest.
Okay, brilliant.
I know, it's lovely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. See you.
Bye.